Here's how I would use the latest episode of Paradise to teach people about reading their Bible better. I'm Dr. Divine. I have a PhD in Old Testament, and I'm also a huge fan, like a lot of people, of the show Paradise. I'm always encouraging people to ask questions of the text that we read to deepen our study and understanding of the Bible. And I felt like this week's episode of Paradise was the perfect tool to talk about that. I'm focusing on two characters, Xavier and Gary. Xavier, we can think of as a biblical reader. So he comes on the scene in episode 5, and he's trying to see all the information that he can gather because he's not really sure what's going on. And then Gary, on the other hand, we can think of as a biblical writer. He's the one who has the information. He's setting up the story for us. He's telling us who the heroes are. He's telling us who the villains are, but he's not objective. What Xavier, the biblical reader, is getting is based off of who Gary wants to present as positive and who Gary wants to present as negative. If Gary is the only source of information that Xavier has, then obviously there are some perspectives that are going to be missing. We don't have Bean's perspective, we don't have Terry's perspective, and we don't have Enos's perspective. In addition to that, if Gary is the only source of information that Xavier has, then he's able to skew Xavier's perspective of the people in the story. For example, Xavier probably thinks of Enos as a jerk and a traitor because that's how Gary sets up the story from the very beginning, right? He sets Enos up as the bad guy. He didn't necessarily want Terry there. And so it's kind of easy for Xavier to see Enos then becoming a traitor. When it comes to biblical studies, one of the ways that scholars deal with the missing perspectives is by, reading other ancient Near Eastern literature or through archaeology. Like, there are ways to try to get a fuller picture of what's going on. But you aren't able to get a fuller picture if you're not curious about the things that you're reading. So when you're reading the Bible, it is important to deepen your study by asking certain questions. And I've done a video on this before, but who's writing this text? What is their aim with writing this text? Who are they writing to? Who benefits from the way that this story is told? And who suffers from the way this story is told? Now, obviously, Gary has some malicious intent behind why he's not giving Xavier the full scope of everything. And I'm not saying that the biblical writers have malicious intent. What I am saying is that biblical writers and other writers, when they're telling a story, they are saying what they want their readers to know. They're saying what they want their readers to hear, and they're saying what they want their readers to believe. And that doesn't always consider all the perspectives involved in the story. So it is incumbent upon us as readers to inquire if we are interested or if we choose to do so.